The death of hip hop is the most popular genre of music outside of pop music, which is just popular music, is the most popular genre of music dying. Well, in today's video, I'm going to posit a case that it just might be, and I'm going to connect a handful of small things I've noticed, address some other videos on the subject matter, and then just leave you with some ending ideas on whether or not hip hop is here to stay. To start things off, we have memes surrounding the most recent XXL freshman class. There are memes circulating at the moment, I'll throw one up on screen, making fun of the fall of this once great entity in hip hop reporting. I don't know how true that is, honestly. Like, XXL really, it's definitely been pertinent for the past decade, but there was one year in particular, 2016, which many people will know as the year of this freestyle, an epic moment in hip-hop history. A lot of greats who are now very popular made their premieres in a cipher like this. I say that like they didn't make their premieres there, but it was a moment that was like, look at all these people like early in their career in this fucking like just setting, you know, electric energy, blah, 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 fun freestyle. It's felt like since that year, no XXL class has come anywhere near the class of talent, the like career trajectory, just the feeling of like, oh, they're a part of this movement, which was SoundCloud rap, which coincides also with something Anthony Fantano viewers might call peak trap, kind of the main popularity of trap music, the main popularity of mumble rap and SoundCloud rap, all of which are kind of different genres, but sort of coalesced at the same time to hit their peaks circa 2017, 2018. And really, up until COVID, I would say it was still pretty obviously the most popular thing. But over the course of COVID, it felt like the air was sort of taken out of it. A lot of the key hip hop like figureheads, the J. Cole's, the Kendricks, the Kanye's, it hasn't felt like there has been an album or happenings that have been as pertinent as they were in the late 2010s. And that all sort of adds up to this idea of whether or not it's on a downward trajectory, which I think when we look at these memes making fun of how terrible XXL is and how we can't seem to replicate these feelings and the just pure internet virality that was happening at this stage, it's obvious that XXL is one signal that we can look at to say things are not as hot as they used to be. Number two is Travis Scott's album. Now, I know it's early to say, I know some people are very bullish on this album. I was skimming it a couple days ago, and I can say, even though it's got all the powerhouses of hip-hop and kind of like pop hip-hop adjacency, you know, it's got a fucking song with The Weeknd and Bad Bunny. Like, there's so much going for this record, and it still just feels so like absent of the energy that was surrounding Travis circa Astroworld drop 4 or 5 years ago, and it just feels so much more empty. Like these album pushes, they feel a lot more commercial. They feel less like just this like zeitgeist that can bring everyone together, and it's just all anyone online talks about. Like, I really, as someone who tries to stay very aware of everything happening online, I have not seen that with Utopia. Like, they had kind of a fun marketing rollout, but there aren't, it's nothing like what Sicko Mode and some of these things that were happening 4 or 5 years ago were evoking the feelings of. And it's pertinent because this is honestly, like, outside of Kanye, one of the kind of like figureheads of modern hip hop over the past decade. Building upon this, we also have the death of No Jumper, which, again, if you coincide it with SoundCloud rap, was this mainstay of hip hop culture that has now kind of hit its lowest possible point. I'll toss up a reference video. Fucking Turkey Tom just made a video about it. A ton of people have made videos about the rise and fall of Adam. But realistically, I mean, he made his bread and butter of the main popularity of No Jumper to the point where he was getting a record deal with Atlantic to be like a label that could sign people. He did all of that off the back of SoundCloud rap and the pure energy that was happening circa 2016, 2017, with all the, you know, the Little Pumps and the XXX and the mumble rappers and that whole kind of troop of people, where it did feel like a real internet movement, much akin to how like like the MAGA era, like Pepe Wars, like that felt like a real internet happening. A lot of what's happening now, you don't. There are things like I would say Yeet and August, and there's like a million of these, like the underground. But I can say this candidly, I'm not going to say any names, but I like know people who run these hip hop media outlets that are derivative of No Jumper, and they tell me they're like, the numbers are just not as big as they were with SoundCloud rap. And we can go into like actual numbers, which I know a lot of you are going to be like, well, Blair, these amount of things are charting. And, you know, I'll reference an Anthony Fantano video where he talks about this article that was saying hip hop is dying because there hasn't been a single hip hop album or track in the #1 on Billboard in all of 2023. And he kind of takes the video to say like, okay, this is a signal that maybe it's not as popular, but it doesn't necessarily mean, like, if you look at the rest of the chart, there's tons and tons of hip hop still in there. Hip hop that's 20 years old, hip hop that's new, hip hop all across the spectrum. I don't think that's necessarily the absolute best signal, but in it, he kind of tacitly acknowledges that, like, yes, all of these things kind of have their rise and fall, and even if it's witnessing a small drop off, it's still in the mainstay, which is really what I do want to acknowledge, is that it's not, I'm not saying it's not going to be like what rock is now, where it's a genre that is just perpetually going to be marketable and there will be interesting things coming out in it. But in terms of, you know, when people declared rock was dead, what they were trying to say was rock as this kind of articulator of pop culture, of like, it was this essence that was fueling so many different, you know, how people dressed, how people thought politically, how people like articulated themselves. It is impossible not to say that hip hop has obviously been that over the past, you know, clearly the past, like, let's say 8 years, maybe a decade. Then before that, it was really, really at its peak in 2004, circa like Eminem, and a very different type of rap than what we have now, or what's popular now. And it was still popular throughout, you know, circa 2018 to 2004. There were like, it definitely morphed with, it's gone to like bling rap, there's eras. But basically what I'm getting at here is that maybe it is time that hip hop begins to kind of step away from the limelight, and something else will come to be articulated that better speaks to the generation of people who are going to like look for the next way to just articulate culturally and music specifically. That's my theory. I will say, I'll also kind of like end on the note of, I talk a lot about shed theory on this channel. I think I've talked about them 2 or 3 times now, and how they're kind of one of the only independent music entities right now that I think is like very mimetically viable outside of Yeet. And even that, I would say the stuff that is the most popular is not even the hip hop inside of their collective of things happening. It's like meme sound bites that, you know, the stuff that resonates and gets crazy popular and can put up numbers that rival the types of virality we were seeing at like peak hip hop moments. It's not, they're not like hip hop sound bites, they're memes, and it's memes interspersed with music, which, again, if you've watched this channel, you probably know what my take on whatever the next zeitgeist will be is. But I make this video to say there's a lot of cultural indicators that hip hop is falling out of favor with the youth. It's falling out of the same amount of sway it held, particularly in this iteration of kind of like internet pop culture over the past decade. It is on a downturn. That's the take. It is what it is. Let me know what you think in the comments below.